On this episode of the podcast, I sit down with Eddie Brennan, President and CEO of Beacon Skiff, 1911 established, Heirloom, and Gen 5 Labs. We talk about the incredible history behind Beacon Skiff's family business, how they've continued to evolve and innovate over the years, and the philosophy that drives everything they do. Eddie shares lessons from building iconic brands here in Central New York, navigating growth, taking risks, and even some of the failures that helped shape their success. Awesome conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. It's a busy time of year for you, huh? You guys gearing up?
Yeah, we're like, everyone always jokes like they think the fall's so busy, but it's like we're year-round.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
it's like a year-round.
I've been there like midsummer.
Very
There's
busy
a ton of
business,
people here.
Yeah. Gearing up for like concert season, and then then we go right in apple picking and
Nice.
and the cannabis side, we're the largest cannabis company in the state, so we're like that's
year round.
always
I
busy.
assume.
Yeah.
Okay. How much of that operation's indoor? Or is it all
That is
outdoor?
all outdoor. Yeah.
All outdoor.
Yeah. So it's
Okay.
all like we have 1 acre. We're going to 2 acres this year. All outdoor grow. And then the majority of what we grow goes into pre-rolls.
Okay.
We have a pre-roll product, and then we convert some of it to distillate that goes into all of our beverages and gummies and
Yeah.
all the other products. So
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to dive into
yeah,
all the things you have going on.
absolutely.
But let's definitely take it back. Beacon Skiff, 1911. Anyone local, and probably not local at this point, knows or has heard of Beacon Skiff, or at least one of your brands.
Yeah.
But I'm sure over 100 years ago, as I read a little bit, but
Right.
it started as what your two great grandfathers
Yeah.
were just like, hey, let's do an apple farm.
It's hard to believe. It's actually 115 years, which is
15.
hard to believe. And like statistically, it's almost impossible to get to 5 generations. Like if you look at the math,
Just doesn't happen.
it
usually.
just doesn't happen. There's so many decisions that happen, or different generations want to take the business in different ways. But yeah, started as an apple orchard.
What it's funny too, though, from what I know of apple trees, if let's say we decided to do it today, okay, let's do this, apple tree farm.
Right.
You plant the trees, you still got to wait, what, 10 years before you even see the fruit?
Yeah, it's like six years. First of
6
all,
years, okay.
you'd never start an apple orchard. Like terrible
Did it-
investment.
Yeah.
Not something I would recommend getting into. I always joke like 1 acre of cannabis we grow, does more revenue or profitability than 500 acres of apples. So that blows your mind. And then not to mention in the apple business, weather can be your best friend or your enemy. And one night you can lose an entire crop. So like this past year, and actually 3 or 4 weeks ago, the temperature went down to like 19 degrees for not just a little bit, went for the entire night. So like 6 hours, it was
Yeah.
19 degrees.
Jeez.
And in that instance, you go from having a great crop to like all of a sudden we have no sellable apples on the market for the upcoming season. So my grandfather, after he passed away, Marshall Skiff, I got his diary. And so you can read the notes that he would take over the years. And it's funny, most people's diaries cover everything from like their family to all the things going on in their heads. His was all weather. It was like all weather focused. Anything that was happening, whether it be winds or different temperature swings to like precipitation we were getting. I always thought that was interesting. When I came into the family business, I made it my goal to never allow weather to impact whether we could be in business in the future.
Something you absolutely cannot control.
Absolutely. Yeah. To run a business and have no control and like have a few nights that can ruin a season. That was tough. And that was really, the ups and downs of the business were always weather related.
That's interesting. Your grandfather solely kept a journal for weather, probably for him to kind of reflect and to look back and to see the patterns or to recognize patterns, right? When you document it, I'm sure it kind of stays with you a little more.
Yeah.
That's just interesting. Before, like, you could just go to ChatGPT and ask what the
Oh my
weather has
gosh,
been for the last, 100 years or whatever.
Yeah, my grandfather, was a huge influence on my life. Actually, both my grandfathers, but Marshall Skiff specifically, we call him the outdoor guy at Beacon Skiff. He was really anything apple tree related, from trimming trees to irrigation. I remember getting up at 4 a.m. in high school one summer, staying at his house, and we'd go drag irrigation pipe or thinning apple trees in the early morning hours, and just learning so much from him. And really, what I learned, he just had so much passion for the land and the apple trees, and I try to remember that, and everything we do is to try to preserve the land, right? And
Yeah.
unfortunately, today we can't keep the land going just on growing apples, which is why we've had to do so many other things. But at our core, we're an apple farm, and I'm not only are we an apple farm, but I'm really proud that we're an apple farm, and we try to keep all the trees going. And even today we grow, over 500 acres. We have 1,000 acres of land, and we plant over 25 different varieties of trees. But to the earlier point, like, do not get into an apple farming business. Try something else.
Yeah. Well, your website does a great job. It kind of lists, every 5-10 years, what was happening in the world
Right.
and what was going on at Beacon Skiff, what you guys were doing. And obviously brings us up, to today. But talk about your background. You're a fifth generation.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. So that's obviously had been around your family for quite some time.
Absolutely.
And maybe just talk about your upbringing, what your thoughts were, maybe graduating high school. Like, it sounds like you probably didn't think you were going to be entering the family business.
No, and today I'm president and CEO, but my proudest title is that I'm the fifth generation of our family business, and that's an honor that I don't take lightly, and I take my role really seriously. But ending up at Beacon Skiff was the last thing I ever thought would happen to me. Growing up, my dad wasn't in the military, but we lived kind of a military life. We would move every 5 years. So he worked for a company called Duty Free Shoppers. Actually, he still does today. He runs the company, and they're airport shops that you would see. If you go into the average airport, it's all the discount liquor and cigarettes and all the things that they sell. This is more of a luxury model, so they carry all the big brands. And when you get into China and Hong Kong and Vietnam and all the companies or all the countries out there, they are the premier retailer. So we would move around. We would follow my dad's career path. It took us to we were in Georgia, we were in Connecticut, we moved to Hawaii, and then ultimately ended up in California.
Wow.
And then I landed in New York. I went to Colgate University into New York
When did
City.
you come back to New York?
Moved back to New York in 2000, and that was really to go to college. So I went to Colgate, but never was there a thought of coming back to Beacon Skiff. There were all other people running the family business. It was an apple orchard. Always had like fond memories of it, and I had worked there, and I had always loved my time there. But my path was in New York City. I wanted to be in the retail industry, and
Quick question. You went to Colgate, played lacrosse.
Yeah.
So you weren't in New York playing lacrosse though growing up.
No, yeah.
You were in California? You're in Hawaii playing?
Yeah,
like, that's pretty impressive, not even being from the area and still able to go to Colgate, Division I school.
I learned to play lacrosse in Hawaii, which is crazy.
Wow.
And I had cousins that lived in Skaneateles, and they would come and teach me. And then ultimately I moved to California in high school. And my brother, Steve, and I started the program at our high school. We went on to win the California State Championship.
Nice.
And then ultimately I got recognized at a camp, the Colgate lacrosse camp, and ended up going to Colgate for college and had a successful career. But similar to my path at Beacon Skiff, it was very unknown. Actually, when they would announce my name playing at Colgate my freshman year, it was like, they're like from, when they announce players, they would say Eddie Brennan from Honolulu, Hawaii. And so it was always like, my friends would always think it was the funniest.
That's cool.
Funniest thing, especially when it was 10 degrees and we were playing, Canisius in Hamilton, New York.
Just check him hard. I don't want to get out of here. So you end up in New York City after Colgate.
Yeah.
I think you're working for Bloomingdale's. Is that what I read?
Went to Bloomingdale's, went into their training program. It was a great training program. I showed up on my first day, and I was I was the only guy out of 25 women. So I get there on the first day. I'm like, wow, I stick out like a sore thumb. Like, what are you doing here? But retail was something I always wanted to get into. On my dad's side of the family, there was a deep lineage of merchants. My namesake, Edward A. Brennan, ran Sears back in the 90s. And Sears, if you remember, back in the 90s was the largest retailer
everywhere
in the country.
Yeah.
And so, and he worked his way from selling trousers on the floor of Sears all the way up to become CEO. And I watched that progression and would talk to him as a kid and just loved that path so much and watched my dad's career develop. And so that was my passion. I wanted to get into retail, and Bloomingdale's was a great path for that. And ultimately I stayed there for 10 years.
Oh, wow, 10 years. Okay. So talk about, once after that 10 years, did you start missing home. Well, this wasn't even home.
Yeah, it wasn't home.
So it's like,
Um,
what, I don't want to say it's a complete 180, but it's pretty close. We're going from New York City, Bloomingdale's to
yeah.
upstate New York,
Yeah,
Apple
well,
Farm.
back to what we were talking about, like weather, ultimately weather was the demise of Beacon Skiff to some degree in the early 2000s. We'd really had several back-to-back tough weather events that impacted the business. And at the time, 80% of the entire company's revenue happened in a very compressed time period. So like 8 weeks, 80% of the revenue happening. If you think about everything relied on apples, and without a big apple crop, the business really fell on hard times. So if you think back then, there was no cannabis, there was no
Yeah,
1911. It
when
was all
growing
wholesale
up,
apples.
yeah, going down, we did it, every year, we'd go down, we'd pick apples, you'd hang out.
Yeah,
But you're right, all of it was centered around having good
absolutely.
apples.
But my dad's, we're very similar. He's a big thinker. He thinks long term, and he was one of the only. My grandfather Marshall Skiff had 5 daughters, and several of his son-in-laws got into the business. My dad was not one of them, so he stayed out of the business, went and did his thing. But when he saw the business struggling, he had this light bulb moment, like let's go into the family, let's come help try to save the family business. And he had worked at Duty Free Shoppers, understood the alcohol business. And, it was really his idea to say, how do we, we have this gem where we know over 150,000 people come to this place in upstate New York, this beautiful hill. The views are incredible. They come just to pick apples for an hour or two, and then they leave. What if we created a product that would captivate people and keep them here? And so it was his vision really to create the tasting room that stands there today, which is the mecca of Beacon, 1911. And I saw that, and then he would call me every week. He was living in Hong Kong. I was in New York City, really trying to convince me like to come into the family business. And there's a lot of risks getting into a family business, right? One, they didn't want me there to begin with. Like, what am I gonna do? And there's certainly
The city
stories
slicker here.
around that. Yeah, I mean, I tell the story. The first day I showed up to Beacon Skiff, one, everybody's looking at me like I have 10 heads. Like, who are you? Why are you here? I mean, people knew who I was.
Yeah.
But they stuck me in a little, not a nice conference room, a little conference room off the Apple packing line. And no one talked to me. I sat there with an old computer, and in those moments, it's like, what are you going to bring to this place that isn't already happening? How do you challenge thinking? No one wants to change. Yeah. Everybody thinks the way they've done things is the way they've done things, and that's how they're going to do it. But I knew it wasn't sustainable, and my dad pushed me to think outside the box. And I had seen businesses fall on hard times. So my grandfather, Ed Brennan, who ran Sears, Sears was this incredible business. Everyone thought it would stand the test of time, but I saw over time, as it didn't innovate, and after he left, how they fell on those hard times. And I knew Beacon Skiff we needed to pick up the snow globe and shake it and change things and break things and just test things. And ultimately, I was the person who did that. And I had to slowly build the trust of the other family members to come in and do that.
This episode is brought to you by Renewal by Andersen of Central New York. Spring savings are going on right now, and Upstate Impact listeners can receive $750 off 4 windows or more. Just mention Upstate Impact when you call to take advantage of one of the best promotions they offer all year. If your windows or doors are outdated, drafty, or costing you on energy bills, now is a great time to schedule your free consultation. Call 315-422-3500 today. Yeah, it's not so much. You might have 3, 4, you probably did have $5 million ideas.
Right.
But if you're not getting buy-in from everyone else, what good are the ideas? I mean, that's probably just as hard, if not harder, of a project, is coming up with a way to get buy-in. And hard times can help people say, hey, we need to change. Well, let's try something new. But I'm sure you needed some leadership qualities. You needed to be able to get them on board. And like you said, it took time. But talk about that a little bit. I mean, how do you introduce, things are going a certain way for almost 100 years. Hey, guys, let's change things up.
Yeah. The first mistake I made was I tried to be exactly what the business didn't need, right? And so that was like, I tried to learn about farming, and I tried to learn about, packing lines for apples, and I tried to learn about storing apples, and I attempted to drive a forklift, which I flipped immediately, and everyone laughed at me. And I realized quickly that's not what the business needed. The business needed to challenge old ways of thinking, challenge the status quo. But that came with resistance and people not always wanting to go with those plans. So I started slow and I tried to create different ideas. So we knew we had a great product in 1911, hard cider, which had been originally was Beacon Skiff. We transitioned it to 1911. We gave it the name 1911 because it conveyed heritage and history, and that was the founding of our farm. And so we would slowly iterate and try new products. And at the time, 1911 was being made in a garage, no bigger than the size of this studio. We were making it in 200-gallon tanks. But we knew we had something that worked and resonated, especially when people would come to our Apple Hill campus and interact with the brand. So, I took a page from what was happening in craft beer. And if you look back 15 years ago, the craft beer industry was taking off, but also the gluten-free movement was exploding. We knew we had a good product, and the thing we had to do was connect it back to the land and connect it back to our story, because even before I arrived, we had this amazing, authentic story across 5 generations, and we knew that's what all the other brands didn't have. Was our ability to connect things back to the land. So just those like slow building blocks and pushing through resistance is really hard when people don't want to change, and you have 4th generation owners who feel like the way that we've done things is the way we should continue to do things. So, change, even today, I talk to my team, change is the only thing that's going to be consistent in this company. And if that's not for you, that's okay. But this place isn't going to be for you, because my intention is to get it to a 6th generation, and without change, that's impossible.
Yeah. It just seems like a genius idea. Just even the slight change from Beacon Skiff hard cider to 1911. You're talking about bring it back to the land. What do we have? What is our competitive advantage? 1911, we were established. Whoa, they've been around forever. You know, just that shock of like when you see that, it's a year.
Yeah.
And it's attributed to the company somehow.
Right.
So little tweaks like that, which I'm sure also some big changes. But that also leads, because I was going to ask, you're talking about a tasting room you and your father were talking about. I was like, did you guys have something to taste at that point? Was that, so you already had the cider? Was that before it became 1911? It seemed like one of the bigger changes you initially guys, took on. And to kind of talk about that, right? We're like, all right, let's have a tasting room somewhere. We don't need fresh apples. Anyone can come at any time. And then it seemed like it kind of snowballed from there.
Right. Well, to be able to drop a tasting room into a place you already know 150,000 people are going to come, regardless if the tasting room exists, they're going to come to ride the ponies and pick the apples. When the tasting room was constructed, we knew we had this captive audience to try and, have the product, displayed and then ultimately tasted. The funny thing is, when we opened the tasting room, I think it opened the middle of September, we didn't have our liquor license. So people could come to the tasting room, but they couldn't drink and they couldn't buy anything. So for like 2 weeks, it was a museum. It was essentially a museum. But the tasting room, when you walk in it today, it's this juxtaposition, right? You have a modern brand of 1911, has big colors, we're in cans, but it's a juxtaposition of like the old wood. And all the wood in there is from reclaimed timber from an old barn we found in Pennsylvania. We want customers to connect with the brand, but ultimately, when they taste the product, it's all about quality and consistency. And today, when you taste 1911, the same cider you're going to buy in Syracuse, New York, or try in our tasting room is the same taste profile you're going to buy if you buy our cider in California or Florida or Minnesota. And that, today, 1911 is a top 10 hard cider brand nationally. And ultimately, it's built on that quality and consistency, because when somebody buys it in Florida, they don't know about
and brand.
Yeah, the majority of people haven't been to Beacon Skiff.
Yeah,
they may not even connect to Beacon Skiff. So that's always really interesting.
Well, I think you guys have been a big, proponent of this, and social media has helped. But Upstate Fall, that is a very enticing thing for anyone across the country.
Yeah,
seeing the colors change, seeing apple picking. A lot of places, like I was down in Texas, it's just not a thing, right? But then you come up here and you see what you guys put on,
right?
And it's like that just adds to the brand, right? Oh, that's that place in Upstate New York. That place is beautiful. They do all these things. It's like, oh yeah, and I can sit here in Florida and have my cider.
Yeah, and we have the benefit of all the colleges around us. From Syracuse University up to the hills, like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So we pull those
everyone from around the country
people.
comes here to go to university. right?
Absolutely.
They're posting pictures, their friends see it. I mean, it just
Yeah.
spreads.
And the reason 1911's been so successful versus some of the craft beer brands is craft beer brands are local to a town or maybe a city at most. Cider travels. So regionally, we're just as important in Ohio as we are in in some states, some of the counties in New York State, like in New York City, we're one of the biggest hard cider brands. And that's because, orchards aren't everywhere.
That's what I was gonna say. Is that just because there's not as many?
Yeah, there aren't as many hard cider brands, and ultimately, I think in the cider space, authenticity matters, and the majority of hard cider brands today are made using concentrate. So you're buying apple juice concentrate from China or Turkey or wherever you're able to get the concentrate. Well, we actually grow the apples, we press them, we ferment them. We control the apples down to the variety of apples that's going into every flavor of our cider. And that's a real strategic advantage, but it's not the norm in the industry. And so when somebody actually turns around a can of 1911 and looks at it, and they dig just a few layers below that, there's a story. So we're not just, there's so many labels on the shelf right now, but we're a brand with a heritage and a story. And we kind of boil it down to one phrase, like we grow apples. That's what we're all about, right? At the end of the day, we grow apples. We don't just grow apples today. We were growing apples 100 years ago. And it's ingrained in our DNA as a family. The Beaks and the Skiffs still work together today. There's Beaks in the business and there's Skiffs in the business. I like to say our fifth generation gets along better than any other generation, right? We can have dinner together and we can all get along, and there's challenges in family business and there's stories about that. But yeah, we grow apples and we're proud of it. And we don't try to do too much. It's making cider is a simple process if you have the right ingredients.
Keeping that core of apples,
Right.
from over 100 years ago, while also diversifying and trying new things and expanding your portfolio. Is it hard to do that? Like keep the history, keep what we're doing, but also do all these different things?
Yeah.
Or is it easier because you have that core and you're like, all right, because you can do anything you want. You just can't do everything you want.
Yeah.
Does that help you kind of select what the next move is for you?
Yeah. For me, it's always an easy decision to change, where I think other people maybe struggle with it, because I've seen what happens when people don't change. And I've seen businesses in my family. I've seen businesses in the community, and I've seen businesses across the country fail because they got too comfortable making money the way they always have in the past. And I know that can't work, and I know that will never work. And that's the one team. If
you're afraid to not change,
I'm afraid to not change. I'm not afraid to take risks, because I think we can always fall back on the foundation of Beacon Skiff and the history. And the one thing about the Syracuse community in particular is they embrace brands more than any other community I've seen. Like the community here in Syracuse really gets behind brands they love. You could name all kinds of brands in this community, but they show up. And they, I've had people, you move to Florida or you move to another state, but they still support the brand, whether they want to order apples from you because they know that the apples they've picked at Beacon Skiff as a kid are the freshest ones they're going to get.
We did that in Texas.
Yeah,
we got the box of apples.
Yeah, they don't like buying them at the grocery
Exactly.
store in Texas because they're coming from China or a different state. So I always like to hype up Syracuse, and I love living here. I love this place, and trying to build within this community has been really important to me and my family, and it's something we just love to do.
1911 was established, right? You had the tasting room, started making some change. What was next? Was it right into cannabis?
Yeah, well, 1911, Beacon Skiff and Apple Hill still today, like we're still reliant on that fall time period. So one of the things that I brought to the business was a pivot into the music industry a bit.
Was that first?
Yeah, that was really, about 10 years ago, we started dabbling with it. But in the last 5 years, we've gotten really serious about not only like having fun music at our tasting room, but we want to be in the same conversation as some of the biggest music venues in New York State. And I think that is a way for us to get 1911 alongside some of the biggest national acts. So over the last several years, we've had a lot of really amazing musicians come through Apple Hill. So, 3 years ago, we booked a band or a guy called Noah Khan. I'd never heard of him. But today he's probably one of the biggest artists in the world. He's selling out arenas all over the place. But he played Beacon Skiff not like 10 years ago, like 3 years ago.
So cool.
And even today, he talks about how Heirloom, our cannabis brand's one of his favorite products, and asks for us to send him products. So that's really cool. And so having the musical acts come through Beacon Skiff, they always say it's one of their favorite venues to play, because we talk to tour managers who manage multiple bands, and we don't even ask; they ask to come back. So like Lake Street Dive's coming back this year. It's one of their favorite venues to play
Nice.
because it feels like an off day. They can experience the orchard, they can go on runs, they can just have a nice relaxing day. And so I think when people talk about Beacon Skiff now, music, they connect music, which is really special. And we fill a unique void in the community, right? We're not the amphitheater that can hold 15,000 plus. We're a nice 5,000 person venue, but that allows us to host anything from country to alternative to any new and up and coming acts. Unfortunately, we can't do EDM or dubstep, which is what I like, because we'd blow out windows and we'd probably never be able to do a show again. So, our business is all about relationships and forming partnerships. And Dan Smalls, who runs a company, DSP Productions, I formed a relationship with him over 5 years ago. And I saw what he had been doing at Omegang in building music alongside a brewery. And I just felt like it was this relationship I needed to foster. So we formed a partnership, which works great for us. He helps book the bands.
I was just gonna say, like, how do you even go about that?
Yeah, we provide I tried to do it for a long time, promoting shows myself, and
there's just so many bands.
Yeah, it's gambling
that could be coming, and you don't who do you reach out to?
Right,
Like,
and you get so influenced by like your own personal taste in music, right? Which is a big mistake, because this year we have bands coming that I've never interacted with. Like, we have a band called Hot Mulligan coming, and they're like a emo kind of 90s rebrand in the 2000s, in today's era. And their show is going to sell out, and I would have never booked them, but it's going to bring in a whole new crowd to Beacon Skiff that would have never come. And that's the beauty of music up at Beacon Skiff, is people who would never come to our campus are coming, and then they show up, they're like, wow, this place is amazing. They tell friends, and then maybe they come back and pick apples. And if you've never seen a show at Beacon Skiff on a summer night, there's nothing like it. You're not in a big arena. You're looking out over the highest point in Onondaga County. You can see the JMA Wireless Dome. You can see the apple trees growing behind you. You can have a cider, and it's just this peaceful environment. It's easy to get into. It's easy to get out of. You see anyone from grandma and grandpa to like newborns with their parents with earbuds.
Wearing
So it's this fun venue, and it's one of my greatest achievements, I would say, in our company is building this this venue to attract all these artists.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool, and it's just amazing that you're just like, let's do this. And I guess you had other examples throughout upstate New York, but it's still just a huge leap of like, we're just going to start hosting concerts. And I guess you said you started smaller, and you've gotten to a point where you get some real national known bands,
absolutely
international known bands. But it just seemed, from being an apple orchard, all right, we got cider, and now we're doing live music.
Right.
I mean, and then even the other things, then getting into cannabis, they're not like, I mean, they're all related, but they're all big steps.
Yeah.
And, just kind of, but hearing your philosophy, hear you talk, like, you're like, that's what I'm not afraid to do. I'm not afraid to take some risks.
Right. And ultimately it's like, we have a very singular mission, right? We want to maintain the land, the 1,000 acres that we have in Lafayette. Whether it's cannabis or apples we're growing or music, we want to make sure we maintain it, because I believe the land we have in Lafayette up on that hill is it's very important, not only with my family, but it's important to keep it as pure as possible. We border the Onondaga Nation Reservation. We literally share a border with them. They have this beautiful buffalo farm, and as a kid I would go down there and see the buffalo, and today I still go down there, and when you look out there, there's something about it that just says like, you need to keep this place pristine for whether it's the next generation or whatever comes next. Last Saturday morning I got up at 4 a.m, as I always do in the middle of May, and I go turkey hunting at the highest point up on the hill, and it's like the most peaceful thing you could do. My friend Mike and I, we go up there, 2 or 3 times a year, and I follow the turkeys on the property all year all year round. And ultimately, when I shoot one of the turkeys, it's a bit sad because you watch the life cycle,
I'm sure.
and we always have a limit of how many we're gonna shoot over the course of 5 years. That's mapped out. You know, you see the wildlife and all the creatures that live on our land and the connection to the reservation, and ultimately you see all the apple trees, and there's something bigger than what we're building, you know, just with hard cider. It's hard to make money with all the land, and we do so many different things to try to preserve it. But that to me is one of my whys. I love the land.
Yeah. And that probably helps you get rooted in the area while
Yeah.
also simultaneously doing things to promote. and get
Absolutely. Like
bigger.
that, those few
Like
days
those
I
little
turkey
things,
hunt
yeah.
it's one of the most important things I do. It's bigger than any meeting I go to because it's my connection back to what I'm doing.
Yeah. Beacon Skiff, 1911 established, heirloom. You know, you got
Right.
the houses there. You got a cold brew now.
Right.
It seems like everything you guys do is just successful. But I'm guessing there's been things you guys have gotten into or have tried that didn't work out quite
Right.
as well, or, that you've maybe tried experimenting with that hadn't worked, right? Because you need to try things. You don't know always what's going to stick. To anyone from an outsider, it seems like everything you guys do is gold.
Right.
But maybe talk about times that you've tried different things that just didn't work out. And it was like, hey, we had to see if it would.
Yeah. Well, like our entry into the cannabis industry, you could argue was a spectacular failure because we went into it through the New York research pilot program to grow CBD, and we literally couldn't have timed it better or worse. We grew up to 10 acres of hemp, and then the demand for CBD in the U.S. crashed, and we had built this, multi-million-dollar facility. We were growing hemp on our property. We had beverages created, and ultimately the bottom fell out, and New York hadn't legalized cannabis yet. So we were faced with a decision: do we continue to push forward? Because we had operated the facility for 3 years unprofitably. So we had a multi-million-dollar investment that I had to justify, a product that wasn't selling, and were we going to wait and continue to double down for the possibility to be in a legal market? So that was a huge risk. Ultimately, we'll talk about how it paid off, but that's one. Other parts of our business that have been failures. Fresh cider is something we doubled down on over the years. Jugged hard cider that you sell to grocery stores, and ultimately the margins.
The growler?
Yeah, like the jugs, like the Wegmans fresh cider you
buy
buy in a grocery store.
Yeah.
We tried one of our ideas was similar to what you'd find in a liquor store. A 5-liter box of like Franzia wine that you would buy.
Yeah.
Well, we thought we could do that. The boxed cider that we would sell in the grocery stores. So
This isn't hard cider. This
No,
is
it's fresh
regular
cider, yeah.
for everyone. Yes, fresh. Yeah, okay.
So the boxes, we'd send them in stores. They'd start fermenting. They would explode. Like just terrible idea. And we had to stop doing that. But a lot of our risks that we've taken have been with a vision to try to either break into a new industry or make a mark early in an industry. And several of them have paid off, but we've had, at one point we had to destroy like $500,000 of hard cider because the seams on the cans weren't in spec. Not only were they not sealing properly, but when they didn't seal properly, you put them in the warehouse, the cans would re-ferment and then cider would leak everywhere. And if you let cider leak, it turns into apple cider vinegar. And then, we had a whole warehouse full of apple cider vinegar.
You can only use so much apple cider vinegar at once.
So one of the when you go fast and you change, you're inevitably going to hit breaking points, whether that's with you don't have enough people, or people are taking on too much, or you're making mistakes. And we've certainly paid the price over the years of trying to go too fast. Ultimately, I feel like those risks have been worth it and they've been calculated. But if you ask my team over the years, they'd tell you, maybe we go a little too fast at times, and I'm okay with that because we're marching towards something bigger, and we're trying to, we have the support now of a brand that is successful, so we can iterate and make the changes, and we've learned from a lot of those changes and mistakes too.
I think people would argue you're better off going a little too fast and going a little too slow.
Yeah,
right?
I think
to
depending on the business,
quicker.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you just don't want to be behind.
Yeah,
right. It's like, as long as you're taking the calculated risk, right? The downside and things like that. Like you can move a little quicker, and maybe in hindsight you went a little slower, but you don't know at the time. Talk
Yeah.
talk about cannabis. How it turned from what are we going to do here? You have these hemp fields, 10 acres, you said,
Yeah.
and you're like, I don't even know if this is going to be legal.
Right.
Do we double down? Do we scrap it? Well, how did
Yeah.
that go?
I mean, our jump into cannabis today seems very obvious, but if you look back 5 years ago, it wasn't obvious, and it was Matt Kuber, who's the president of Heirloom now, who I work with daily. The two of us, it was our idea, and we saw a window into the industry. One, we were looking for what are new crops we can grow at Beacon Skiff that can actually generate income and can be profitable. Cannabis was ultimately one of those. But we had learned so much in the beverage industry over the years, through making cold brew coffee to fresh cider to making hard cider. And we knew all those mistakes we had made over the 10 years, we could get right launching a beverage. And we felt like in the our thesis was, we felt like in the cannabis industry, beverage was the easiest way to break the stigma. So beverage was something that you could bring anywhere, right? So you're not gonna light up a joint at grandma's birthday party or a graduation party, but you could bring a beverage and enjoy it.
How many people are like, I will never smoke anything. I'll try this. Take a sip of it.
And there's so many people today that are consuming it. So our thesis was, beverage, we want to break the cannabis stigma. Beverage is the easiest way. Well, we're one of the, we've built a company on beverage manufacturing, whether it's distilled spirits or hard cider or any of the other products we make. We worked with the flavor houses. We had Jan Fay, who's our head cider maker, who's in my opinion, one of the best beverage development people in the industry, who wanted to be a part of it. So he helped us developing all the recipes. And so that's, we stood up a beverage facility before we had a license. So we made a multi-million-dollar investment on the hopes that we would get a license. And it was a calculated risk that ultimately paid off. And since we had participated in the New York program, we were able to break in. So day one, when the Housing Works store opened in December in New York City, we were able to be in that store with beverages and a bunch of other products. But the core team that started Heirloom was the core team that built Beacon Skiff in 1911 to what it was today. That was the original core team, and we were risk takers. We believed, we were a young team. You could argue we bet the farm on cannabis, and I think to some degree we did. It was that big of an investment, and there was pushback, not so much from internal people, but surprisingly from the legacy consumers that loved Beacon Skiff as we got into it. And just as recently as last week, I still get emails from people who have
just because of the stigma related to cannabis.
Yeah, I think there's still a segment of the population that feels like cannabis is a gateway drug into harder drugs. And I battle that stigma all the time. And I have this unique seat as I on a alcohol brand and a cannabis brand, so I see both. And it always blows my mind how people don't challenge the person who's drinking bourbon or drinking hard cider,
way
but
worse
somehow,
for you.
Yeah, they feel like cannabis crosses this moral line, even though 100,000 people a year die from.
I mean, that's propaganda throughout their
deaths,
lifetime,
right?
Yeah,
and another 100,000 from opioid deaths. And so, like, if you look at the data, it's unequivocally, cannabis is okay. And so we pushed through all that, and the name Heirloom was a very intentional name, and we wanted to connect it back to Beacon Skiff. And so Heirloom Gen 5 Labs is the name of the company we created, because it's what the fifth generation brought to the family business. And each generation has been challenged to bring something new to the business. But the name heirloom apple trees are passed down from generation to generation. They're the toughest apple trees to grow. If you talk to my cousin Pete, who runs the orchard, he would say he hates growing heirloom apple trees. They blossom at weird times. They need more water. They're just tough trees, but they're really hardy. They last for a long time. When you pick the apples, they're not great eating apples. You wouldn't eat them, but they're really acidic. They have a lot of tannins, and they make the best hard cider. And so when we thought about branding it, we kind of changed it from HEIR to AYR, put our own spin on it, and connected it back to the farm. And today, Heirloom, all of our manufacturing facilities sit on land that at one point was all orchard.
Wow. So that's a whole nother, I mean, it sounds like you have like a whole separate arm of what you guys are doing,
Yeah.
just focused on cannabis. I mean,
Absolutely.
you need it because you
and
guys
since
are
it's
huge.
federally illegal, it's actually a separate company. So we actually had to
You
sell the
had
land
to.
to, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
banking, everything from
That's
banking to
true.
insurance to payroll.
Yeah.
It's all, since it's federally illegal, it's all challenged. So we've always battled with that, but Heirloom today is the largest cannabis brand in New York State. It's something we're really proud of. And in that industry, we not only do we create fun products and we have fun, but we set the standard for what quality products look like, and we're always innovating. And our thesis originally when we created Heirloom was the average customer who walks into a dispensary is overwhelmed, confused, and they don't know what to do, right? And in the past, it was all big cannabis leaves and green and in your face stoner, imagery.
Crazy name. Yeah.
So we wanted Heirloom to be this modern brand that when you showed up at your grandma's birthday party or an engagement party, it looked like another cool beverage, and people would ask, what is that? And when you drink it, we don't want it to taste like bong water. We want it to taste like, any other beverage you're going to have. So, we created a smooth drinking product that is not only quality and tasting, but it's consistent from a dosing standpoint. So, if you want 5 milligrams, that's what you're going to get, because everyone's had the bad experience of, making the pop brownies and, going
Put
to
a
bed
little
the
too
next
much
day.
in.
Yeah.
Been there.
Yeah.
You sit down with your leadership team today, right? 2026. You have all these different things going on.
Right.
You're one to take risks and to always embrace change. Where is that happening now? Are you still trying to get into different areas? Or are you trying to maybe refine and try things within the umbrellas you've already created, or the different ventures you have now?
Right.
What's next for all of your brands,
Yeah.
under your umbrella?
Right now we're in refine and not pause, but we're catching our breath a little bit, right? So we've created the largest cannabis brand in New York State in Heirloom. 1911 is a top 10 brand nationally. We're one of the largest producers of cold brew coffee on the East Coast. We do that quietly. We produce,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, like all the
Exactly.
cold brew
That's
coffee you buy at
crazy.
Wegmans is made at Beacon Skiff, not just in Syracuse, but nationally. We do that for 8 other retailers. So we're doing that year round in that facility. And then we've got our agritourism business, our concert business. The one thing we are really excited about is one of the feedback we've gotten at Apple Hill is like our kids area is lacking, and I get feedback from moms
My
all
kids
the
love
time.
it.
Yeah, you've invested in all these adult activities, we love it, but like our kids want more. So we're making a $1 million investment into it's called the Apple Grove Adventure Park. So it's going to be
Nice.
opening this fall. Everything from like a zip line to a huge barn we're building with slides. There'll be jump pillows and pads and animals, and we are on a fast deadline to get it done. And if people come up to concerts this summer, you'll kind of see it all happening in the background. So that to most companies would be a big deal. For us, it's we're always challenging how we get better and how we do things a little bit differently. The one thing today, and I know everybody talks about AI, and everybody's trying to figure out how to use it. In the last month, my mind has been completely blown by Claude and some of the tools that I'm learning. Yesterday, I did a project that would have taken me like 2 to 3 days. It did it for me in like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen like probably 5 or 6 times in the last 2 months. And I'm just, as a business owner, I'm like, this is so powerful. How do I harness this? And I'm getting a little overwhelmed. But that is going to revolutionize everyone's business. And from using it as a thought partner to helping just be better as leaders and learn and have a thought partner that's working with you. So I'm excited about that, and definitely trying to implement that in my company a little bit more.
Yeah, the only analogy I can kind of think of is like doing math before a calculator.
Right.
Writing these long problems out when you could just punch it in, but it's like a calculator for literally everything you're doing in business and life.
Right.
And it's like,
It's unbelievable.
yeah, you want to embrace it? Or you want to go back to just writing out all these math problems
Yeah.
for everything you're doing? Or do you want to embrace technology, partner with it?
Although last night I was helping my daughter with her homework. She's 12. She's in 7th grade. And like, I can't do the algebra or whatever she was working on. So I'm like snapping pictures on the side and like putting it in a cloud. She's like, what do you do? You can't cheat. I'm like, no, this is just for me. I need to like learn because I can't figure out what you're doing. Yeah. So I do some of that.
That's funny. Well, Eddie, I appreciate you coming on. What's the best way for people just to stay up to date with everything going on at Beacon Skiff? Is it a website, social media, probably all of it?
Yeah, social media. We're on Instagram, 1911's on Instagram, Beacon Skiff and Heirloom. We have handles on all of those. And then, LinkedIn, I try to be like a thought leader. And so I'm always putting my takes out there. And
you had a great take on microbursts.
Yeah.
I read that earlier.
Absolutely. And we just like invite people to, not just Apple season, come up for a concert. If you've never been up to Apple Hill for a concert, like this summer, I think we have 15 shows, like come up for a concert. Like, I know you'll enjoy it. Bring a friend or family. It's just a really fun experience. And we're going to keep pushing because we can't sit back on our laurels, and we're just going to keep pushing, and passion and is what drives us. And for me, I'm just so grateful to be building in this community.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Eddie.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.